Russian fighter jet and a military drone from the United States had a little whoopsie-doopsie over the Black Sea. And Donald Trump is lashing out, Ron DeSantis is lashing out, Russia's lashing out, and basically everybody's pissed about it. So let's try to go through some of the details because some of it has to do with dumping on each other, like literally dumping on each other. We're going to talk about that and just get through this. So basically, here's the scoop. A U.S. drone was on a spying mission over the Black Sea. It ends up getting intercepted by 2 Russian fighter jets. The drone we use is an unmanned MQ-9 drone. It's used for surveillance and recon. It's kind of like a fancy version of a really cheaply made Chinese spy balloon. Chinese spy balloon picked up off Craigslist for like $10. Okay, not really. But our spy drone costs like $32 million. And the price of it is skyrocketing. That drone keeps getting more and more expensive. Everything in aerospace keeps getting more and more expensive. Well, apparently, this Russian jet, or one of these Russian jets, I don't know if they were like trying to communicate with it, like, hey, this is an interception, please pull over. I also don't know why I'm using a German accent, but given that it was an unmanned drone, I think the drone is probably like, yeah, exactly, like nothing. And that probably pissed the Russians off. So they tried to wake the drone up. The way they apparently tried to wake the drone up is by dumping fuel on it. The Russian jets were apparently, quote unquote, harassing the drone, flying over it and dumping fuel on it. It's literally like they were trying to dump on the normies, but I thought usually that only relates to AMC. But anyway, the Russian jets were basically trolling the drone to try to either wake it up or mess with its communications. The maneuvers were called reckless by Air Force generals, and environmental activists were freaking out because they heard fuel was being dumped above the Black Sea, even though planes that have to make emergency landings do this all the time. But anyway, apparently at one point, this drone was struck and ended up crashing into the Black Sea. And that drone has still not been recovered. We don't know if the Russians are getting it or if we're able to get it. Probably not the safest area for us to try to go get it right now. It's probably Russia that's going to end up getting their hands on our UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle. But anyway, Russia is now claiming that our drone was flying with its transponders turned off because it was trying to spy on the Russian borders. That basically makes it harder for that to show up on Russian surveillance technology. And it basically makes Russia feel like their airspace was being violated. That the fact that they say it was flying around with their transponders turned off is a violation of international law. And it basically implies that the United States is trying to spy on Russia. Which, imagine that, the United States spying on Russia. I mean, that's probably exactly what's happening, let's be real. But the Black Sea is really important. And even though Russia is confirming that there was no shoot down of the drone, that this apparently was an accident, it's still pissing people off on both sides, really all sides. There are a lot of sides. I mean, there's like the United States and European side. There's the Ukrainian side, which there's an alignment here. Then there's the Russian side. Then there's the Chinese and rest of the world side, although it's like how much of the rest of the world and China are wanting to relate to each other, how much is staying neutral. There are a lot of sides at play here. Then you've got like Ukrainian separatists as well. Then you got the mysterious people who definitely weren't the CIA who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So there are a lot of parties at play here, as is typical with war. But it's worth considering why the Black Sea is important in the first place. There are a few reasons for this. First, the Black Sea provides Russia with access to warm water ports because the Black Sea kind of goes up into the Russian borders a little bit. And Russia gets really cold and really icy, especially up north or closer to the Arctic. So the nice thing about the Black Sea is if you can have warm water ports like in Crimea, Sevastopol, which remains ice-free year-round, you can actually function a lot easier. You know, it's easier to function on a warm, sunny day than it is on a freezing day, right? Anyway, a second thing is it also allows Russia to kind of influence trade in that region, which is obviously pretty important. Wheat exports, grain exports, whatever. Then, obviously, the Black Sea is home to Russia's like naval fleet for that side, so that gives them a lot of power in the region, which also explains why we were probably spying on them over there. It also acts as a buffer zone between Russia and NATO countries, which is kind of interesting to think about because you kind of got like Russia, Turkey, and then like a big Black Sea, and then Ukraine and Crimea, right? So you kind of have a buffer zone that the sea creates, which is interesting. And then, of course, the United States likes to monitor this area because, well, A, we spy on military activity. We, want to obviously help NATO out, so we give them our $32 million drones to screw around with. The goal, obviously, also is to maintain some form of global freedom, whether it comes to trade or otherwise. Now, Donald Trump has freaked out. I wanted to play this video from YouTube, but YouTube deleted the video. YouTube's really good at sort of censoring some of this stuff, but basically, Donald Trump is freaking out. He says we're living in the most dangerous times in history, and the only person who can actually save you from World War III is Donald Trump, according to Donald Trump. Not biased at all. Donald Trump is responding to calls of potentially supporting regime change in Russia. We just had a Canadian not the Canadian Prime Minister. It was somebody in the Prime Minister's cabinet who is calling for regime change in Russia. That's kind of dangerous and being seen as a way of aggravating Putin even more than he's already aggravated. Anytime we hear about regime change for Russia, it just gives Russia more propaganda to keep the war going on because it allows Putin to basically tell his apathetic Russians, see, they're trying to overthrow me. Look at these clips from the international community saying they want to get rid of us. We must continue to fight to protect our country. And people in Russia are like, all right, we're brainwashed by your media and we half believe it, but like, whatever, we're just going to try to keep living our lives over here. Which is kind of, frankly, now what DeSantis is coming across with. DeSantis is making these arguments that, hey, this is just a territorial dispute and we really shouldn't care about Ukraine and or Russia, that this is just a territorial issue and maybe we should stop funding it. That's going to be really interesting for the 2024 presidential election, so pay attention to that. Obviously, DeSantis hasn't announced his presidential election yet, but let's just say he's doing a book tour in areas like California at the Reagan Library, which is where all the Republicans go in California. He is also holding a book tour, or just did, in Iowa, in which, is kind of seen as like front running for a campaign. Oh, sorry, quick note. If you want to change your perspective on how to build wealth and actually make money with stocks, real estate, your job, your side hustle, your self-employed gig, whatever it is, property management, rental properties. If you have fears about thinking the system's rigged and you don't know how to navigate through the system, consider joining me in any of the programs linked down below on Building Your Wealth. Not only do you get access to me with Q&A and our course member live stream, I can provide a lot of perspective to you, but you get lifetime access to the courses. The cost of the courses goes up over time, so the sooner you join, the more you lock in a lower price now, and you get a price match guarantee in the event the price, for whatever reason, were lower in the future, although we don't expect that. We expect prices to only trend up as we continue to add value. And so you want to lock that in now with only upside ahead of you with more content and protection against any downside. Folks, check out those programs on Building Your Wealth. While I am a licensed financial advisor, I've got a real estate startup that's raised over $25 million, and we're coming up with another fundraising round with our Reg A. We are super excited to have you in those courses. I want to be clear, none of the information is personalized financial advice because I don't specifically know your situation, but I think you're going to get some pretty incredible information that'll help guide you on the way to wealth. Use that St. Paddy's Day link down below. Anyway, a little bit more detail on the jets involved, just because I think it's interesting, and we've got 9 minutes before we have to cover PPI and retail sales. Anyway, the Russian fighter jet involved was apparently a Sukhoi Su-27. It's a twin-engine, super maneuverable aircraft designed for air superiority. Actually came into use first in 1985. Our remotely piloted drone first came into use in 2007. There are a lot of people like Senator Jack Reed, a chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, saying, quote, this is a dangerous and provocative act that could have led to a broader conflict. There's a lot of argument that, there are basically politicians who are arguing, that's it. This shows why we need to send more military support to Russia. And then you have basically the counter trend to that saying, dude, no. This is exactly why we should not be involved over there, because this is getting ridiculous. We're getting too close to conflict, and we don't want World War III. So maybe we need less money. And generally what it's turned into is sort of like I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot more Democrats that are like more money and Republicans that are like less money. And a lot of this debate is going to happen with the debt ceiling debate that's coming up probably in about 3 to 4 months as we approach the X date for when we technically hit our debt ceiling limit and we actually run out of money. Since technically we already hit the limit, but we could play accounting tricks until we get to that point. Anyway, the Reaper drone, even though I said it's worth about $32 million, because of supply chain shortages, according to HITC, recently the costs have gone as much as double for this, up to $64 million for this drone that just got down. It's a lot of money. The United States, after all, is the country that's sending the most of the money to support this war in Ukraine. No other country is sending as much money to Ukraine as the United States is. Not only that, but a lot of what we're sending is not just weaponry. Some of it is just straight up cold cash. Here's a piece from the Council on Foreign Relations, which shows you that $26 billion of the money that we've sent, the $76 billion we've sent, has straight up just gone to loans and economic support for Ukraine. Only about $23.5 billion has actually gone to weapons, with another $4.7 for like grants and loans for weapons, another $18 billion going to training, another $3.9 going to humanitarian assistance. This is a far cry from what other countries and institutions are supporting. You can see here the United States contributing the most, EU institutions barely getting above half, actually not even half, less than half of what the United States is contributing. Of course, a lot of people are saying, no, this is a good thing because it's basically the United States being able to conduct war without the United States conducting war. It's all really exhausting, and I think everybody really wants it to end. But then, of course, you've got a lot of people basically The Guardian reporting that, hey, this is like unprofessional, this collision is dangerous and an international threat. The Deutsche Welle reports the U.S. has summoned their Russian ambassador over the drone incident. Both the U.S. and Russia are conducting investigations into it, whatever. People on social media are kind of going all over the place on this. You've got both sides of the argument. I always kind of like seeing what the sentiment is. So you got some people saying, this is an excellent justification for providing Ukraine more money, the fighter jets that they need, and more support with United States bases, like aircraft support, so they can attack Russian bases. I feel like the person might be being a little bit sarcastic, but that is kind of what some people are saying. Then you have other people saying like this is basically the worst that could happen because, yes, this could lead to more money being spent, and we don't want that to happen because we want this war to end, not to escalate into World War III. Remember, Colombia's position on this is like, look, we're not sending a dime because we don't want to be known as contributing to this war. So anyway, kind of crazy. Steve here in the comments is saying maybe China will broker a peace deal. That's kind of everybody's hope right now, is that maybe there could be some form of a neutral party, like a neutral third party that could actually broker a peace deal between the axis of the United States and Europe and Ukraine and the axis of Russia and Iran and North Korea. Although a lot of people question like how neutral really is China. Could China actually be the country to broker that peace deal? Who knows? But this whole Russian jet stuff, in summary, is a disaster. Again, you had a Russian jet that dumped fuel on our Reaper drone to try to wake it up, probably because you had the Russians in the cockpit going, "You need to pull over right now." This is not even meant to be a Russian. I don't even know what it is. But the drone is probably just, like, again, because it's unmanned, and that pissed the Russians off. The Russians, again, flying a 1985 style jet, and we're flying a 2007 drone that's unmanned. So a little bit of a mismatch there. They're like on Gen 2. We're on like Gen 5 fighter jets. Like, it's just not even close. It's kind of like them yelling at a robot, and now everybody's pissed off about it. Anyway, that gives you a summary of that. I think the weapons that we really need are these right here. This is a Needler from Halo. I got myself one, and you can too by going to metkevin.com/Needler. metkevin.com/Needler. Right next to the links for the courses on building your wealth and life insurance you can get within 5 minutes by going to metkevin.com/life.